Somewhere in a sunlit meadow, far from the noise and hurry of the waking world, a single honeybee drifts lazily from blossom to blossom, her wings beating nearly 200 times each second, yet producing only the softest, most hypnotic hum imaginable. This tiny creature, no heavier than a small paperclip, carries within her an ancient wisdom passed down through countless generations of her kind. Tonight, as you settle into the stillness of evening and let the weight of the day slip away from your shoulders, let us wander together through the quiet, wondrous world of bees. There is no rush here in this peaceful place, only the gentle unfolding of 100 calming truths about these remarkable beings who have graced our planet for over 100 million years, long before humans first walked upon the earth. The honeybee's world moves at a different pace than ours, a tempo measured not in minutes or hours, but in the gentle rhythm of seasons and the slow arc of sunlight across the sky. While we measure our days in hours and appointments and obligations, she navigates by the angle of the sun and the subtle perfume of distant flowers drifting on the breeze. Her compound eyes, made of thousands of tiny lenses working together in harmony, perceive the world as a soft mosaic of color and light, unlike anything we can truly imagine. Ultraviolet patterns painted on petals, entirely invisible to human sight, guide her like gentle runways leading to sweet nectar. In her remarkable perception, every flower glows with secret markings that we shall never see, each one a quiet invitation written in the language of light itself, beckoning her closer with promises of sweetness. When a bee takes flight, she enters a realm of effortless grace that seems to defy the very laws of physics that govern heavier creatures. Her 4 delicate wings, gossamer thin and veined with intricate patterns, hook together to form 2 larger surfaces, allowing her to hover, dart, and glide with precision that engineers and scientists still struggle to replicate in their most advanced machines. She can travel up to 15 miles per hour when she wishes, though she rarely hurries unless necessity demands it. Most often, she meanders from flower to flower at a leisurely pace, savoring each stop as though time itself has dissolved into honey and ceased to matter at all. The air around her becomes a gentle ocean through which she swims with perfect confidence, buoyed by the warmth of afternoon light filtering through the leaves above. As we continue this gentle journey together through the quiet world of bees, perhaps you might consider staying with us a while longer on this peaceful expedition. A simple click to subscribe means you will never miss another tranquil evening spent exploring the quiet corners of the natural world where wonders await those who take the time to look closely. And if these soft truths about bees bring you comfort tonight, as you settle into rest, a gentle light helps others find their way to the same peaceful space where sleep comes easily. Now let us drift onward together, deeper into the honeyed stillness that awaits us in the chapters ahead. The hive holds countless secrets yet to be revealed, and the night stretches before us, young and infinitely patient. Within every honeybee lives a heart that beats with extraordinary endurance and reliability, a tireless rhythm that sustains her through all her labors. This tiny organ, a simple tube running along her back rather than centered in her chest as ours is, pulses steadily throughout her entire life without faltering. It circulates not the red fluid that flows through human veins, but a pale, gentle substance called hemolymph that carries nutrients to every corner of her small body. Unlike our own complex circulatory system with its chambers and valves, hers flows freely through her body cavity, bathing each organ directly in nourishment, like a gentle tide. It is a simpler design, perhaps, but one that has sustained these remarkable creatures through ice ages and warm epochs, through the rise and fall of countless other species who have come and gone while the bees remained. The bee breathes in a manner both ancient and elegant, using a system so different from our own that it seems almost otherworldly in its design. Along the sides of her small body run tiny openings called spiracles, delicate portals through which air enters directly into a network of extraordinarily fine tubes. These tubes, called tracheae, branch and divide until they become almost impossibly thin, carrying oxygen to every cell without the need for lungs or complicated respiratory machinery. It is a quiet system, almost meditative in its simplicity and efficiency. With each passing moment, air flows in and out through these miniature openings, sustaining the soft fire of life that keeps her wings humming their gentle song and her journey continuing ever forward through the fragrant meadows of her world. A honeybee's antennae are among the most sensitive and sophisticated instruments in all of nature, marvels of biological engineering that put many human inventions to shame. These slender appendages, constantly moving and sampling the world around her, contain thousands of sensory cells that detect not only scent, but also the slightest touch, subtle changes in temperature, shifts in humidity, and even the faint electrical fields that flowers emit to advertise their readiness to share their nectar. When she approaches a blossom, her antennae rid the air like a whispered conversation carried on the breeze, gathering information no eye could ever see. She can sense whether another bee has recently visited this particular flower, whether sweet nectar awaits within its petals, and even gauge the subtle shift in barometric pressure that heralds weather approaching from many miles away across the distant hills. The hive itself is a masterwork of cooperative architecture that rivals any structure human hands have ever built, a testament to what collective wisdom can achieve without blueprints or formal plans. Built entirely from wax secreted by the bees themselves from special glands on their abdomens, it consists of perfect hexagonal cells arranged in parallel combs that hang vertically in the enclosed darkness. This hexagon shape is no accident of nature, but rather the most efficient structure for storing the maximum amount of precious honey using the minimum amount of carefully produced wax. Mathematicians and engineers have long admired this elegant geometry, recognizing in it a natural optimization that took human minds centuries to fully appreciate and understand. The bees, however, have known this profound truth since before human memory began, building their perfect cities generation after generation without ever questioning the ancient wisdom encoded in their very being. Temperature within the hive remains remarkably constant throughout the year, hovering around 95 degrees Fahrenheit, regardless of whether summer heat blazes outside or winter frost creeps across the meadow. The bees achieve this impressive feat of climate control through collective effort and ceaseless cooperation. On hot days, they fan their wings in coordinated shifts to create cooling currents of air that flow through the comb's intricate passages. When frost threatens and temperatures plummet, they cluster together in a living ball and vibrate their powerful flight muscles to generate warmth without ever taking flight. This living thermostat has no switches or dials, no programmable settings, only the shared understanding of thousands of individuals working in quiet harmony toward a common goal. The hive breathes as one great organism, its internal temperature as steady and reassuring as a sleeping heartbeat in the darkness. As evening deepens and the colors of sunset fade from the sky, our first chapter draws gently to a close. Consider for a moment the quiet patience of a bee at rest after her long day of labor. After visiting hundreds of flowers across the meadow and flying several miles on wings, no larger than your smallest fingernail, she finds a place within the warm embrace of the hive and grows still at last. Her antennae droop slightly, her body relaxes into the wax beneath her, and she enters a state of deep repose, not unlike our own sleep. Scientists studying these remarkable creatures have observed that bees experience something akin to true sleep, complete with periods of reduced responsiveness that resemble dreaming in their mysterious depth. In the comforting darkness of the hive, surrounded by the gentle warmth of her countless sisters, she rests and perhaps remembers meadows painted in ultraviolet colors we can never hope to imagine. Gently now, we enter a new passage of our journey together, one that reveals how bees speak to one another in ways both ancient and profound, without ever uttering a single audible sound that human ears could hear. Deep within the warm darkness of the hive, a forager who has discovered a distant patch of clover begins to move in a peculiar and deliberate way. She traces a figure 8 upon the vertical surface of the honeycomb, waggling her body with rhythmic intensity during the straight portion of her path. This is the waggle dance, one of the most sophisticated forms of communication in the entire animal kingdom, a language of pure movement. Through its rhythm and angle, she tells her sisters exactly where to find the flowers she has just left behind in the meadow beyond. The direction of the waggle run corresponds precisely to the angle between the sun and the food source, a feat of geometric communication that seems almost impossible for creatures so small. If the dancer waggles straight upward on the vertical comb, the flowers lie directly toward the sun. If she angles her dance 30 degrees to the right of vertical, the flowers wait 30 degrees right of the sun's current position in the sky. Time passes throughout the day. The sun moves across the heavens in its eternal arc, yet the bees adjust their dances accordingly with remarkable precision, their internal clocks perfectly synchronized with the slow movement of daylight overhead. It is a language written entirely in motion, understood by thousands without confusion or misinterpretation, passed down through countless generations of quiet instruction. The duration of the waggle portion reveals the distance to the food source with surprising accuracy. A longer waggle means a farther journey ahead, while a brief and quick shimmy indicates flowers blooming nearby, close enough that little flight time separates the hive from reward. Scientists studying these dances over many decades have found remarkable precision in the information conveyed through these simple movements. A bee can communicate locations over several miles away with accuracy that early researchers found genuinely difficult to believe when they first documented the phenomenon. Yet the dance never lies. Follow its instructions faithfully across meadow and woodland, and the promised blossoms appear exactly where predicted, waiting patiently beneath the same warm sun that guided the message home. Beyond the waggle dance, bees share other movements equally meaningful within their complex social vocabulary. The round dance, a simple circular pattern performed with joyful energy, announces that food lies very close to home, within perhaps 100 feet of the hive entrance where sisters stand guard. There is no need for precise directions or complicated angles when the bounty waits just outside the door, practically within arm's reach. Upon seeing the round dance, eager foragers simply exit through the entrance and search the immediate surroundings with excitement, following the sweet scent carried on the dancer's fuzzy body until they too discover the nearby treasure waiting in the morning light filtering through the leaves. Scent plays a profound and essential role in bee communication as well, weaving through their social interactions like an invisible thread connecting all members of the colony. Each hive possesses its own unique odor, a chemical signature as distinctive as a human fingerprint, composed of the combined scents of every bee within. Guard bees stationed at the entrance recognize returning sisters by this familiar perfume and turn away strangers who carry different scents from foreign colonies. Within the hive, pheromones released by the queen drift through the chambers like a calming incense, reassuring every worker that their mother remains healthy and their colony whole and secure. Her scent is the very heartbeat of their unity, the invisible bond that holds thousands together as one. When a worker bee finds a particularly rich source of nectar overflowing with sweetness, her excitement manifests clearly in the vigor and enthusiasm of her dance upon returning home. A more enthusiastic waggle with rapid vibrations attracts more followers eager to share in the discovery, while a subdued performance draws only passing interest from a few curious observers. In this way, the colony collectively decides where to invest its precious foraging efforts, following the most compelling dancers to the most promising fields of flowers. It is a form of democracy expressed through movement, where the quality of information determines its influence throughout the hive, rather than any fixed hierarchy of command or authority. Vibrations also carry meaning within the bustling hive, adding another layer to the complex web of communication that connects its inhabitants. Bees can produce sounds and pulses by pressing their bodies firmly against the comb and vibrating their powerful wing muscles, sending tremors through the wax that others feel through sensitive organs located in their legs. These stop signals, as researchers have come to call them, can interrupt a dancer mid-performance, suggesting that her advertised food source may no longer be worth pursuing due to changed circumstances. It is a gentle correction rather than a rebuke, a way of updating information in real time so that the colony's resources are never wasted on empty promises or depleted flower patches. Young bees learn to interpret these dances by watching their elders with patient attention, absorbing the grammar of movement through careful observation over many days. There are no lessons announced, no formal training sessions scheduled within the hive, no teachers standing before students to explain the meaning of each gesture. Understanding comes gradually through experience, the way a child learns language by immersion rather than formal instruction, picking up meaning from context and repetition. By the time a worker is old enough to forage herself, she already knows intuitively how to read the dance floor's messages and will soon add her own graceful movements to the ongoing conversation that has continued without pause since the first bees took flight millions of years ago. The piping sound made by queens carries yet another layer of meaning within the hive's rich acoustic world. Before a new queen emerges from her specially constructed cell, she begins to produce a distinctive tone that can be heard throughout the entire hive, a sound that announces her imminent arrival. Existing queens respond with their own calls, and through this acoustic exchange of piping and quacking sounds, the colony prepares for the delicate transition ahead. These are not confrontational sounds, but rather necessary announcements, signals that change approaches and that the social order must gently reorganize itself to accommodate new life and new leadership in the endless cycle of succession that has continued since time immemorial. As we let this chapter on communication settle softly around us like a warm blanket, consider how remarkable it is that such tiny creatures have developed so rich and nuanced a vocabulary for sharing information. Without words, without written symbols, without any technology beyond their own remarkable bodies, bees convey precise information across thousands of individuals who understand every gesture perfectly. Their conversations happen in complete darkness, understood by all who share the crowded space of the hive. It is humbling to witness and contemplate this quiet eloquence that has flourished for millions of years, in meadows and forests we will never see, under suns that set long before our ancestors first looked up at the stars and wondered about the world around them. Now we turn our attention to honey itself, that golden substance which has captivated human imagination since the earliest days of our species walked upon this ancient earth. Honey is far more than simple sweetness extracted from nature's bounty. It is the distilled essence of countless flowers, carefully transformed by the patient work of thousands of bees into something that borders on the miraculous in its perfection. A single pound of honey represents the collected nectar from approximately 2 million individual flower visits, each one a tiny contribution to the amber whole, each one requiring flight and search and delicate extraction. Such abundance, gathered drop by precious drop across meadows and gardens, and wild places we shall never see. The journey from flower to honeycomb begins when a forager lands upon a blossom and extends her long, straw-like tongue deep into its fragrant depths. She draws nectar into a special stomach entirely separate from her digestive system, a honey stomach designed solely for the purpose of transport and initial processing. When she returns to the hive after her journey, she passes this precious cargo to a house bee through careful mouth-to-mouth transfer, beginning a remarkable process of enzymatic transformation that will continue through many stages until water content drops sufficiently and sugars change into the stable treasure we know as honey, that golden gift of patient labor. House bees receiving the nectar chew it thoughtfully and deliberately, mixing it with enzymes produced by their own specialized glands. These enzymes break complex sugars into simpler ones, more suitable for long-term storage, beginning the chemical conversion that gives honey its distinctive character and remarkable stability. The process continues as the nectar passes from bee to bee in a chain of processing, each addition of enzymes bringing the developing honey closer to completion. Meanwhile, fanning bees spread their wings and create gentle currents of air flowing through the hive, slowly evaporating moisture from the ripening nectar until it thickens into the concentrated sweetness that will sustain the entire colony through the cold and flowerless winter ahead. When the moisture content falls below approximately 18% through this careful curing process, the honey achieves its remarkable stability that sets it apart from nearly all other foods. At this low concentration of water, bacteria and fungus simply cannot survive or multiply, no matter how long the honey is stored. The natural acidity of honey, combined with the presence of hydrogen peroxide produced by those earlier enzymes, creates an environment entirely inhospitable to decay and spoilage. This is why honey found sealed in ancient Egyptian tombs remained perfectly edible after thousands of years in darkness. Time itself seems to pause within honey's amber depths, preserving the essence of flowers that bloomed when pharaohs walked the earth and pyramids first rose against the desert sky. Once sufficiently cured and ripened to perfection, the bees cap each cell of finished honey with a thin layer of freshly secreted white wax. These delicate caps, called cappings by beekeepers, seal the treasure safely away from moisture in the surrounding air that might otherwise dilute and destabilize the carefully prepared stores. The sealed honeycomb becomes a pantry that can last virtually indefinitely, waiting patiently for the winter days ahead when no flowers bloom in the frozen meadows and foragers cannot fly through the cold air. In this way, the summer's abundance extends gracefully through the lean and difficult months, sustaining life within the hive when the world outside grows cold and bare and the snow lies deep upon the silent ground. The flavor of honey varies tremendously depending upon its floral source, creating a diversity of tastes as varied as the flowers themselves. Clover honey offers a mild, familiar sweetness that most people recognize from childhood, while buckwheat honey presents a dark, molasses-like depth that speaks of richer earth. Orange blossom honey carries delicate citrus notes, reminiscent of spring groves in bloom, and wildflower honey changes character with the turning seasons, reflecting whatever blooms dominated the landscape during the weeks when it was carefully gathered. Each jar becomes a portrait of a particular place and time, an edible snapshot of meadows or orchards or forest clearings frozen forever in golden suspension. Beeswax, another precious gift from the hive, comes from 8 small glands located on the underside of worker bees. Young bees between 12 and 18 days old produce the most wax during this phase of their lives, secreting tiny flakes that emerge white and delicate, which they then chew and mold with their mandibles into the perfect hexagonal cells of the comb. To produce a single pound of this remarkable wax, bees must consume approximately 6 to 7 pounds of their carefully stored honey, making wax a precious resource that is carefully conserved and reused whenever possible within the colony's ongoing construction projects and repairs. Propolis, sometimes called bee glue by those who tend hives, represents yet another treasure gathered from the natural world and transformed by bee ingenuity. Bees collect sticky resins from tree buds and bark, mixing them carefully with wax and their own enzymes to create a dark, aromatic substance they use to seal cracks and gaps in the hive. Propolis possesses remarkable antimicrobial properties that scientists continue to study with great interest, and bees coat the interior surfaces of their home with thin layers of this protective varnish. The entire hive becomes sanitized by this constant application, kept cleaner than many human hospitals through the diligent and never-ending work of its tiny inhabitants. Royal jelly, a creamy white secretion produced by nurse bees from special glands in their heads, serves as the exclusive food for developing queens and the initial food for all larvae during their earliest days. This remarkable substance, rich in proteins and fatty acids and nutrients found nowhere else in nature, triggers the developmental pathway that transforms an ordinary larva into a queen capable of laying thousands of eggs throughout her long life. The same genetic potential exists in every female larva at the moment of hatching, yet only those bathed continuously in royal jelly from beginning to end of their development realize their full reproductive destiny. Diet alone determines the profound difference between worker and queen. As this chapter on the hive's treasures draws to a gentle close and we prepare to move onward, we can appreciate how much abundance emerges from such small beings working together in harmony. Honey, wax, propolis, royal jelly. Each substance represents countless hours of quiet labor performed without complaint or hesitation, without expectation of recognition or reward. The bees ask nothing in return except to be left in peace to continue their ancient and essential work. And so they do, year after year and generation after generation, filling their combs with golden stores, while the seasons turn slowly overhead and the flowers remember their partnership with these delicate wings. Let us wander now into the meadow, where bees and flowers have danced together in perfect partnership for over 100 million years of earthly history. This relationship, one of nature's most enduring and beautiful romances, benefits both participants in equal measure, neither taking more than they give. Flowers offer nectar as a sweet reward for services rendered, while bees provide the essential service of pollination, carrying pollen from blossom to blossom across the meadow and enabling the creation of seeds and fruit that will ensure the next generation. Neither could thrive without the other in this arrangement. Together, through countless seasons of cooperation, they have shaped the very landscape of our world into the flowering paradise we know today. When a honeybee lands upon a flower and begins her work, her fuzzy body brushes gently against the anthers, those delicate structures that hold the precious pollen within their chambers. Tiny grains of this golden dust cling to the branched hairs covering her thorax and legs, sometimes accumulating into visible golden baskets packed onto her hind legs for the journey home. As she moves from this flower to the next in her methodical rounds, some of this pollen transfers naturally to the receptive stigma of each bloom, initiating the process of fertilization that will lead to seeds. This simple act, repeated billions upon billions of times each day across the entire planet, sustains the reproduction of flowering plants everywhere life takes root. Flowers have evolved remarkable and ingenious strategies over millions of years to attract their bee partners from near and far. Bright colors serve as advertisements visible from great distances, announcing their presence to any passing pollinator who might be searching for sustenance. Meanwhile, patterns of ultraviolet markings, invisible to human eyes, guide bees directly to nectar rewards hidden deep within the petals. Some flowers even change color after successful pollination has occurred, signaling to approaching bees that their nectar has already been claimed and they should seek fresher blooms. This honest communication saves bees from wasted visits and ensures that unpollinated flowers receive the attention they need. The conversation between flower and pollinator continues to refine itself across countless generations of mutual adaptation. Fragrance draws bees from remarkable distances across the landscape, guiding them toward rewards they cannot yet see. A flower's perfume carries on the gentle breeze like a whispered invitation, reaching the sensitive antennae of foragers who may be working a mile or more away in distant corners of the meadow. Different flowers release their strongest scents at different times of day, coordinating their aromatic appeals with the activity patterns of their preferred bee visitors. Morning glories peak their perfume at dawn when early foragers first emerge, while evening primrose waits for twilight to release its sweetest fragrance. The garden becomes a symphony of scents throughout the day, each note carefully timed to reach its intended audience at precisely the perfect moment. Some flowers and bees have developed exclusive relationships over vast stretches of evolutionary time, their forms molding to match one another with exquisite precision. The shape of certain blossoms precisely matches the tongue length of specific bee species, ensuring that only the right pollinator can access the nectar hidden within the flower's deepest chambers. These perfectly matched pairs depend entirely upon one another for their continued existence, their fates intertwined across millennia of shared history. When we see a long-tongued bee visiting a deep tubular flower and fitting perfectly into its form, we witness a partnership written in the very structure of their bodies, a love letter composed in flesh and petal across millions of patient years. Approximately 1/3 of all the food humans eat depends upon pollination by bees and other diligent insects who work the flowers without expecting our gratitude. Almonds, apples, blueberries, cherries, cucumbers, and countless other crops we take for granted rely on these tiny workers to set fruit each growing season. Without bees, our tables would look remarkably different, emptied of many familiar flavors and textures that we have come to consider essential parts of our daily meals. The simple apple sitting in your kitchen represents the work of many bees visiting many blossoms on a spring morning you never witnessed, their collective effort crystallized into crisp, sweet flesh that nourishes body and soul alike. Blooming in dappled shade, prairie grasses blooming in dappled shade, prairie grasses swaying in the wind, and countless shrubs growing along woodland edges all require bee visits to reproduce and continue their lineages. These plants in turn provide food and shelter for birds, mammals, and insects of every description who make their homes in these wild places. The bee's simple journey from flower to flower ripples outward through the entire interconnected web of life, supporting creatures that may never encounter a bee themselves, yet owe their very existence to that ancient partnership between wing and petal. Flower constancy describes the fascinating behavior of bees visiting only one type of flower during each individual foraging trip, a habit that serves both bee and blossom remarkably well. Rather than sampling randomly from whatever catches her eye, a bee working lavender will continue visiting only lavender until she returns to the hive, even if other attractive and nectar-rich flowers bloom temptingly nearby. This constancy benefits plants tremendously, ensuring that pollen travels between compatible blossoms of the same species rather than being wasted on different flowers that cannot use it. The bee's focused attention and disciplined approach makes her an extraordinarily efficient pollinator and a faithful partner to each flower species she chooses to court on any given journey. Forager returning home carries pollen. Forager returning home carries pollen weighing nearly half her own body weight, yet she still manages to fly the entire distance home without faltering despite this heavy burden. She builds these loads carefully and systematically, moistening the pollen with nectar and pressing it into compact pellets with her specialized leg structures. The color of these pellets reveals which flowers she has visited on her journey, ranging from pale yellow to bright orange to deep crimson red, depending on which blossom contributed its golden dust to her collection. As we let these thoughts of flowers and bees settle gently into the quiet evening that surrounds us, consider how much beauty emerges from such simple exchanges, repeated endlessly across the meadows of the world. Nectar freely given, pollen carefully carried, seeds formed in secret chambers, fruit ripened in the summer sun. The meadow hums with 10,000 small negotiations happening every moment, each one a gift freely offered and gratefully received without thought of contract or obligation. In gardens both wild and carefully cultivated, this ancient bargain continues without complaint or interruption, as natural as breathing, as reliable as the sunrise that warms each new morning, as peaceful as the drowsy warmth of a summer afternoon when time itself seems to slow. Moving gently onward through the quiet spaces of the evening, we come now to contemplate the quiet miracle of a bee's life cycle from its very beginning to its peaceful end. Every honeybee begins as a tiny egg, no larger than a grain of rice, laid carefully by the queen into a waiting cell that has been specially prepared to receive this precious cargo. This single hexagonal cell becomes a nursery, then a cocoon, and finally a launching pad for a new life entering the world. The queen can lay up to 2,000 eggs in a single day during peak season when the colony is growing strong, each one placed with remarkable precision into its own wax chamber, each one holding the potential for wings and flight and all the wonders that follow. 3 days after being carefully laid in its wax chamber, the egg hatches into a small, translucent larva resembling a tiny crescent moon curled at the bottom of its cell. Nurse bees immediately begin feeding this helpless creature with devoted attention visiting it hundreds of times each day with offerings of royal jelly, pollen, and honey mixed in nourishing combinations. The larva grows with remarkable rapidity, molting its outer covering several times as it expands beyond the confines of its previous form. Within just 6 days of this constant feeding and growth, it has increased its original weight by over 1,500 times, a rate of growth unmatched in most of the animal kingdom and scarcely imaginable to those of us who grow so slowly. When the larva reaches its full size after days of constant feeding and growth, worker bees cap its cell with porous wax, sealing it into a private chamber for the remarkable transformation that lies ahead. Here, in perfect darkness and protective warmth, the creature spins a delicate cocoon around itself and enters the mysterious pupal stage. During this hidden time, concealed from view within its wax sanctuary, remarkable changes occur that border on the miraculous. The soft larval body reorganizes completely, developing compound eyes, folded wings, jointed legs, and all the intricate structures necessary for life as an adult bee. This metamorphosis takes approximately 12 days for workers to complete, slightly less time for drones. The emergence of a new bee from her cell is a quiet event witnessed only by her sisters who work nearby in the warm darkness of the hive. She chews patiently through the wax capping that has protected her during transformation, pushing her way into the bustling world of the hive for the first time in her new form. Her body is soft and vulnerable, her wings crumpled and wet, her coloring pale compared to the darker hues of her older sisters. Over the next several hours, she will harden and darken as her exoskeleton cures. Her wings will unfurl and dry in the warm air of the hive, and she will begin to take her place in the endless work of the colony. But first, she rests, attended by workers who groom her gently with their antennae. First few days of adult life, she cleans She cleans cells and keeps the nursery tidy, preparing chambers for the next generation. Then, she graduates to feeding larvae, her specialized glands producing the nutritious jelly they require for proper growth. Later still, she takes on the demanding work of wax production and comb building, then moves to guarding the entrance against intruders, and finally, in the last precious weeks of her life, she ventures outside the hive to forage in the wider world. Each stage prepares her for the next, her body adapting physiologically to whatever role the colony needs most at that moment. A worker bee in summer lives approximately 6 weeks, her life burning bright and brief like a small candle that illuminates the world intensely before guttering out. Much of this time is spent inside the protected darkness of the hive, with only the final 2 or 3 weeks devoted to the dangerous but essential work of foraging flights in the outside world. During this outdoor phase of her existence, she may fly several miles each day, visiting hundreds of flowers, before returning home with her precious cargo of nectar and pollen. Her delicate wings gradually fray from constant use and exposure to the elements, and eventually she departs on a final flight from which she does not return, her small body giving out somewhere in the fields she served so faithfully. Winter bees, born in the cooling days of autumn as the flowers begin to fade, live much longer than their summer sisters whose lives burn so quickly. These special individuals may survive for 6 months or more, their bodies physiologically different at the cellular level, built specifically to endure the cold months ahead when no foraging is possible. They cluster around the queen in the heart of the hive, keeping her warm and safe through the frozen weeks until spring returns with its promise of new flowers. When blooms finally appear again in the warming meadows, these elderly winter bees often become the first foragers of the new season, teaching the ways of the outside world to younger generations before their own remarkably long lives finally come to their peaceful end. The queen, largest of all bees in the hive and distinguished by her elongated abdomen, may live for 3 to 5 years in ideal conditions. Her sole purpose after a brief mating period early in her life is to lay eggs, thousands upon thousands of them throughout the seasons, replenishing the colony continuously with new workers and drones. She is attended constantly by a devoted retinue of workers who feed her special food, groom her carefully, and spread her pheromones throughout every chamber of the hive. Though we call her queen and imagine her giving orders, she issues no commands and makes no decisions. She is more accurately described as the heart of the colony, its reproductive center, the source from which all life flows outward into the community she creates. Drones, the male bees who make up a small percentage of the colony's population, live a life quite different from their hard-working sisters. They have no stingers to defend themselves or the hive, gather no food from flowers, and perform no work within the walls of their home. Their sole purpose in existence is to mate with virgin queens from other colonies, spreading genetic diversity through the broader bee population. On warm summer afternoons, drones gather in specific aerial locations called congregation areas, waiting patiently for virgin queens to pass through on their mating flights. Most drones never achieve this purpose and are eventually expelled from the hive before winter arrives, their brief lives dedicated to a possibility rather than a certainty, a hope that sustains them until their final days. As we rest here at the close of another chapter and let the peace of understanding settle around us, let us hold gently the knowledge that every bee we see represents generations beyond counting stretching back through the mists of time. Each forager in the garden carries within her cells the accumulated wisdom of ancestors who flew these same patterns since before humans first walked upright upon this ancient earth. The cycle of egg, larva, pupa, and adult has repeated itself trillions of times across the ages, each repetition a small triumph of persistence and adaptation against the challenges of an ever-changing world. In the quiet rhythm of the hive, time flows like honey, slow and sweet and endless, connecting past and future in an unbroken golden stream. Now we turn our attention to the extraordinary and wondrous ways bees perceive the world around them. Senses refined over millions of years of patient evolution into instruments of remarkable precision and subtlety. A honeybee experiences reality quite differently from the way we humans do, sensing colors we cannot see with our limited eyes, detecting odors we cannot begin to imagine with our comparatively dull noses, and perceiving vibrations that pass entirely beneath our awareness, no matter how carefully we listen. To understand bees more deeply and appreciate their true nature, we must try to enter their sensory world with open minds, a realm both alien and enchanting in equal measure, where familiar landscapes reveal hidden dimensions of beauty and meaning. Bees possess 5 eyes in total, each one serving a different and essential purpose in their daily lives. 2 large compound eyes dominate the sides of the head like faceted gems, composed of thousands upon thousands of individual facets called ommatidia that together create a mosaic view of the world. These remarkable compound eyes excel at detecting movement across wide fields of vision and navigating through complex environments at high speed. 3 smaller simple eyes, called ocelli by scientists, form a triangle atop the head like a crown. These detect light intensity and help the bee maintain proper orientation during flight, sensing which way is up even amid the disorienting tumble of wind and motion that would confuse our own senses completely. The color spectrum visible to bees shifts dramatically toward shorter wavelengths compared to human vision, opening windows onto a world we cannot directly perceive. They cannot see red at all, which appears only as black to their compound eyes, but they perceive ultraviolet light that remains completely invisible to our own limited vision. This means the world of flowers looks remarkably and wonderfully different to a bee than it does to us. Many blossoms that appear plain white or simple yellow to human observers reveal intricate and beautiful patterns in ultraviolet, guiding bees like landing lights on a runway leading to the nectar within. What we see as a simple daisy with uniform petals, a bee sees as a complex target with arrows and rings pointing directly to its sweet center. A bee's sense of smell operates primarily through her antennae, where thousands upon thousands of specialized sensory cells detect chemical molecules drifting in the air around her. This extraordinary olfactory ability surpasses that of most animals on Earth, allowing bees to recognize individual flower species from remarkable distances, distinguish hive mates from strangers with a single quick touch, and follow pheromone trails through complex environments where vision alone would prove insufficient. A forager can remember the precise scent of a particularly rewarding flower and seek it out preferentially on future trips for days afterward, building a mental library of pleasant aromas that guides her unerringly through the vast and varied floral landscape of meadows, gardens, and wild places. Taste receptors exist not only in a bee's mouth, as we might expect, but also distributed across her antennae and even her delicate feet. When she lands on a flower for the first time, she immediately tastes the surface through these distributed sensors, determining whether nectar awaits within before bothering to extend her long tongue into the blossom's depths. This remarkable distributed sense of taste allows her to evaluate potential food sources with extraordinary efficiency, rejecting unsuitable options almost instantly upon landing, while lingering appreciatively on those that promise sweetness and nourishment. Every landing becomes a subtle sampling, a quick but thorough assessment made through the sensitive tips of her toes touching petal and stem. Vibrations play an essential and often overlooked role in bee communication and navigation within the dark interior of the hive. Sensitive organs located in their legs detect even the most subtle tremors passing through the honeycomb structure, allowing bees to feel the dances of their sisters, communicating news of food sources, even in complete darkness where eyes are useless. They can also sense airborne vibrations through their ever-moving antennae, perceiving sounds and air currents that help them coordinate complex activities within the bustling hive community. This tactile awareness connects each individual to the collective like threads in a living tapestry, creating a network of feeling and response that binds the entire colony into a single responsive organism capable of reacting as one to any threat or opportunity. Magnetoreception, the remarkable ability to sense magnetic fields that most humans can only measure with specialized instruments, may help bees navigate over long distances through unfamiliar landscapes. Research conducted over many decades suggests they contain tiny particles of magnetite within their abdomens, acting like internal compasses that detect the Earth's magnetic field and provide orientation even when all visual landmarks are hidden from view. Combined with their exquisite sensitivity to the sun's position in the sky and the polarized light patterns created by atmospheric scattering, bees possess a sophisticated navigation system that allows them to find their way home across miles of unfamiliar territory without ever becoming lost, even on cloudy days when the sun hides completely from view behind thick layers of gray. Polarized light offers bees yet another navigational tool that remains completely invisible to human perception, no matter how carefully we look at the sky. Sunlight scattering through the molecules of the atmosphere creates patterns of polarization that vary predictably depending on the sun's position relative to the observer. Bees can detect these subtle patterns through specialized regions of their remarkable compound eyes, allowing them to determine the sun's exact location behind the clouds, even when overcast skies completely obscure the solar disk from direct view. This celestial compass remains reliable throughout the entire day, from dawn until dusk, providing a constant reference point that guides their journeys through a world we experience quite differently with our simpler eyes. Memory and learning abilities in bees continue to surprise and humble researchers studying their tiny brains in laboratories around the world. Despite having fewer than 1 million neurons compared to the 86 billion packed into human brains, bees demonstrate remarkably sophisticated learning capabilities that challenge our assumptions about the relationship between brain size and intelligence. They remember rewarding flower locations for days after a single visit, recognize individual human faces with accuracy comparable to our own, and even understand abstract concepts like sameness and difference that we once thought required much larger neural architectures to process. This extraordinary cognitive power, packed into a brain smaller than a sesame seed, hints at efficiencies in information processing we are only beginning to understand and appreciate. As this exploration of bee senses draws to a gentle pause, and we prepare to continue our journey through the wonders of the hive, we can appreciate how rich and strange their experience of the world around them must truly be. Surrounded always by scents we cannot smell with our dull noses, colors we cannot see with our limited eyes, and vibrations we cannot feel despite our best efforts to listen, they navigate a reality layered with information completely invisible to our awareness. Yet we share this planet together in peaceful coexistence, walking the same gardens and breathing the same warm summer air beneath the same blue sky. Perhaps there is comfort in knowing that even the most familiar meadow we have visited 100 times holds depths of experience we can only imagine, mysteries humming just beyond our perception, waiting to be discovered. Let us continue onward now into the architectural wonders of the hive, where bees demonstrate building skills that have inspired human engineers and mathematicians for centuries with their elegant perfection. The honeycomb itself stands as one of nature's most perfect structures, combining extraordinary strength, material efficiency, and visual beauty in a design that seems almost mathematically ordained by some greater intelligence. Without rulers to measure, without blueprints to follow, without any formal training passed down through the generations, bees construct these intricate living spaces using only their bodies and the wax their specialized glands produce, creating cathedrals of geometry that fill the darkness of their homes with ordered purpose. The hexagonal cell shape that defines honeycomb emerges naturally from the bee's construction method and the inherent properties of warm wax under pressure. As bees cluster together in working groups and manipulate the softened wax with their strong mandibles, the combined pressure from 6 directions simultaneously molds each cell into a perfect hexagon without any conscious geometric planning. This shape tessellates perfectly across flat surfaces, leaving no wasted space between cells, as circles or other forms would inevitably do. It also uses the minimum possible amount of precious wax to enclose the maximum storage volume, a mathematical optimum that bees discovered through countless generations of natural selection long before human calculus existed to prove its theoretical superiority. Each individual cell tilts slightly upward at approximately 13 degrees from the horizontal plane, a subtle but essential detail of the architecture. This carefully maintained angle prevents viscous honey from dripping out before the cells are properly capped with wax seals, and it helps developing larvae remain securely in place during their transformation without rolling or sliding from their chambers. The bees maintain this precise angle consistently throughout every section of comb they build, a precision that seems remarkable indeed given their complete lack of formal measuring tools or levels. Yet observation and inherited instinct guide them true, generation after patient generation, building to specifications written nowhere except in the accumulated wisdom of their ancient kind. The comb's foundation walls measure only about 2/1000ths of an inch thick, thinner than a sheet of paper, yet the combined structure can support many times its own weight when completely filled with heavy honey. This remarkable strength-to-weight ratio rivals and often exceeds modern engineering materials designed in sophisticated laboratories, and has directly inspired aircraft designers seeking lightweight yet durable structures for aerospace applications. The honeycomb sandwich panel, commonly used in satellites, aircraft fuselages, and racing vehicles, directly mimics the bee's ancient design, discovered through millions of years of evolutionary refinement, proving once again that nature discovered optimal solutions to complex engineering problems long before human minds thought to look for them. Temperature regulation extends importantly to the construction process itself, governing when and how building can proceed. Bees can only effectively mold wax when it reaches approximately 95 degrees Fahrenheit, coincidentally the same temperature they carefully maintain throughout the hive for brood development and food storage. Working together in dense clusters around construction sites, they generate heat through rapid muscle vibration, softening the tiny wax flakes they secrete from their abdominal glands until the material becomes malleable enough to shape. This communal warming effort, combined with the shared labor of many individuals pressing and sculpting simultaneously in coordinated teams, produces the seamless and beautiful architecture that fills every corner of the healthy hive. The organization of the comb follows remarkably consistent patterns across different hives and even different species of honeybees around the world. Honey stores typically occupy the upper portions of the comb architecture, where the naturally warmer temperatures created by rising heat help keep the viscous liquid flowing and accessible when needed. Pollen storage surrounds the central brood area in a protective ring of colorful cells, placing this protein-rich food close to developing larvae who need it most for their rapid growth. The brood itself occupies the very center of the comb system, where temperatures remain most stable regardless of outside conditions, and where dedicated nurse bees can tend their precious charges with maximum efficiency and minimum wasted movement. Older comb gradually darkens over time as successive generations of bees emerge from their cells, leaving behind thin cocoon layers that accumulate with each new resident and slowly stain the once pristine wax to deeper amber and eventually brown. This aged comb, though less visually striking than the fresh white wax of new construction, carries within its substance the scent memories of countless bees who lived and worked there before and remain structurally sound and perfectly functional for many years. Beekeepers sometimes replace very old darkened comb to maintain optimal hive hygiene and reduce accumulated residues, but the bees themselves continue using their darkened ancestral cells without complaint or preference, the patina of age presenting no impediment to the essential function of raising new generations. When a colony collectively decides the time has come to produce new queens, the workers construct special cells quite different from the standard hexagons they usually build with such consistency. These remarkable queen cells hang vertically from the comb surface like small pendant decorations, resembling textured peanuts in their elongated and distinctive shape. These larger chambers accommodate the developing queen's considerably greater size and hold the abundant royal jelly that fills them throughout the queen's transformation from ordinary larva to reproductive royalty. The sudden presence of these distinctive cells, visible on the comb surface, signals that major changes are approaching within the colony's social structure, a transition that will reshape the community's future. Bees also construct drone cells, noticeably larger than the standard worker cells, to accommodate the male bees' bigger bodies and allow space for their development into their final adult form. These oversized cells tend to cluster together in certain designated areas of the comb, and their distinctive size difference allows experienced beekeepers to identify drone brood at a single glance without needing to disturb the developing occupants. The varying cell sizes distributed throughout the hive demonstrate with remarkable clarity how precisely bees calibrate their construction efforts to the intended purpose of each space, building different sized rooms for different residents with unconscious expertise passed down through generations of instinctive knowledge. As we let these architectural wonders settle into quiet appreciation and allow their meaning to unfold in our understanding, consider how much ingenuity fits within the peaceful darkness of a single hive hidden away in some meadow or garden corner. No single bee understands the grand design she helps create, yet together they produce structures that have awed mathematicians and engineers alike for as long as humans have taken the time to look closely. The perfect hexagon, the precise tilt, the thoughtful organization of living spaces. Each element emerges naturally from simple behaviors, repeated by thousands of individuals following ancient instincts written deep in their cells. In their collective building, we glimpse a form of intelligence distributed across many minds, working in harmony, creating profound order from the peaceful chaos of cooperation. Gently now, we follow the bees through the turning year, observing with quiet attention how their lives ebb and flow with the rhythm of the seasons in an eternal dance as old as flowering plants themselves. Spring arrives, not on any calendar date humans might designate, but when the first reliable blossoms open their petals to the warming sun and temperatures climb above 50 degrees Fahrenheit with some consistency. The colony, which is huddled together through the long, cold winter months, burning slowly through their stored honey reserves, stirs into renewed activity as light increases and warmth returns. The queen begins laying eggs in earnest once again, and foragers venture out on cautious reconnaissance flights to discover what the warming world has begun to offer. As spring progresses through the weeks and flowers multiply across meadows and gardens with increasing abundance, the colony's population explodes in response to the growing opportunities. The queen may lay 2,000 eggs daily at the peak of her production, and the hive swells with new workers, eager to gather the season's generous bounty from every blossom within reach. This period of rapid growth continues through the lengthening days as the sun climbs higher, each warm afternoon bringing more pollen and nectar into the swelling stores. The hive hums with something like optimism, if bees can be said to feel such things, riding the wave of abundance that nature provides in those generous months when the living is easy. Summer brings the fullest and most vibrant expression of hive activity when the colony operates at its maximum capacity. Foragers work from the earliest light of dawn until the last glow of dusk fades from the western sky, and the combs fill steadily with golden honey that accumulates week after week. The colony may reach 60,000 individuals or more during these peak productive months, a small city unto itself, operating in perfect coordination without any central authority directing the work. Long sunny days offer extended opportunities for gathering from countless blossoms, and resourceful bees exploit every available hour of light. Yet even amid this ceaseless industry, the pace remains measured and calm, each bee performing her appointed tasks without urgency or anxiety. Swarming typically occurs in late spring or early summer when the colony has grown strong and conditions favor the ancient process of reproduction at the colony level. A substantial portion of the workers, along with the old queen, depart together to establish a new home elsewhere in some hollow tree or sheltered space, while the remaining bees stay behind and raise a new queen to continue the parent colony in its established location. This dramatic division, though startling to witness as thousands upon thousands of bees take to the air together in a swirling cloud, represents a peaceful transfer of life rather than any crisis or disaster. It is birth rather than upheaval, expansion rather than exodus, the natural way colonies multiply across the landscape. Autumn arrives gradually as the year tilts toward its close, signaled first by shorter days and then by fewer and fewer blossoms to visit as summer's abundance fades into memory. The colony shifts its focus decisively from expansion to preparation for the cold months ahead. Foraging continues on whatever late flowers remain blooming in the cooling air, particularly the goldenrod and purple asters, whose strong, distinctively flavored honey will sustain the winter cluster through the frozen weeks. The queen slows her egg, laying to a fraction of her summer pace, and the colony's population begins to contract naturally as older workers complete their lives. Drones, who would only consume precious resources without contributing anything during the cold months, are gently but firmly expelled from the hive to face their fate. Winter transforms the hive into a place of quiet endurance, where the frantic activity of warmer months gives way to patient stillness. When temperatures drop below 50 degrees Fahrenheit and remain there for extended periods, bees cease all flying and form a tight cluster around the queen in the heart of their home. This living ball of bees generates its own heat through continuous muscle vibration, maintaining temperatures warm enough for survival at its protected center, while the outer layer of bees rotates slowly inward to warm themselves periodically before taking their turn on the cold periphery. No true hibernation occurs despite appearances. The bees remain fully awake throughout the winter, slowly consuming their honey stores week by week, waiting together in patient solidarity for spring's inevitable return. On warmer winter days when temperatures briefly climb above 50 degrees and the pale sun offers a suggestion of warmth, bees take cleansing flights, briefly leaving the hive to relieve themselves after days or even weeks of enforced confinement within their clustered formation. These short excursions into the cold, bright air, lasting only minutes at most, allow them to maintain hygienic conditions within their home without soiling the combs they depend upon for food and shelter. The bees return quickly after completing their business, rejoining the warming cluster before the lingering chill can harm their bodies. Even in the depths of the coldest winter, life continues within the hive, measured and patient and determined, awaiting the inevitable return of warmth that will awaken the flowers once again. The amount of honey a colony needs to survive through winter varies considerably depending on the climate where they make their home. In northern regions, where winters stretch long and harsh, bees may require 60 pounds or even more to carry them safely through until spring flowers finally bloom and new foraging becomes possible again. This substantial store represents the accumulated work of many thousands of bees laboring across the productive months of spring and summer, saved systematically cell by cell against the certain coming of cold that would otherwise bring starvation. Beekeepers who harvest honey must carefully calculate how much to leave behind, ensuring their charges have enough to survive comfortably with a margin of safety against unexpectedly long winters. The winter cluster moves slowly through the hive as the weeks pass and the bees gradually consume the honey stores packed into the cells around them. Beginning typically at the bottom of their living space, where they formed their initial cluster, they eat their way slowly upward over the cold months, always maintaining their tight protective formation as they migrate through their provisions. If they reach the uppermost frames before spring arrives with its saving warmth, they may tragically starve, even with honey remaining in distant parts of the hive, unable to break cluster in cold temperatures to access those unreachable reserves. This vulnerability reminds us how delicate the balance remains between careful preparation and ultimate survival, how thin the margin can be between abundance and want. And so the year turns full circle, as it has for millions of years before us, and will for millions more, each season flowing gently into the next, like honey pouring slowly from cell to cell within the comb. The bees follow this rhythm without resistance or complaint, expanding joyfully when conditions favor growth and contracting wisely when conservation becomes necessary for survival. There is deep wisdom in this surrender to natural cycles, this graceful acceptance of both abundance and scarcity alike as necessary parts of the whole. As we drift through these peaceful thoughts in the quieting evening, perhaps we too can find rest in knowing that seasons always return in their appointed time, that after every winter, no matter how long, comes another spring. Our journey now brings us to consider the long and fascinating relationship between bees and humanity, a partnership stretching back to the very dawn of our species, when our ancestors first discovered the sweetness hidden in wild nests. Ancient cave paintings found in Spain, perhaps 15,000 years old and remarkably well preserved, depict human figures collecting honey from the nests of wild bees high on cliff faces. This deep craving for sweetness, shared across every culture and continent where humans have lived, connected our earliest ancestors to bees long before written history began to record such relationships. The honeybee's many gifts have shaped human civilization in ways both obvious and profoundly subtle across these many millennia of shared existence. Ancient Egyptians revered bees as powerful symbols of royalty and divine power, incorporating them into the very fabric of their civilization. The hieroglyph for honey appeared in royal names and official titles, and organized beekeeping flourished along the fertile banks of the Nile thousands of years ago in one of humanity's first great civilizations. Honey served not only as prized food, but also as valued medicine, preservative for embalming, and sacred offering to the gods in temple ceremonies. Beeswax sealed the wrappings of mummies and lit the sacred lamps that illuminated temple sanctuaries. The relationship between Egyptian civilization and bees ran so remarkably deep that some scholars believe organized scientific beekeeping may have begun there, passed down through generations of careful observation and experimentation along the river. The Greeks and Romans continued and expanded this ancient appreciation, incorporating honey and beeswax into countless aspects of their daily life and religious practice. Greek mythology told enchanting stories of bees feeding the infant Zeus with honey in a hidden cave, and the mysterious oracle at Delphi was sometimes called the Delphic bee for reasons that remain somewhat unclear to modern scholars. Roman authors like Virgil wrote extensively and lovingly about the art of beekeeping, their practical advice remaining remarkably accurate and useful even by modern scientific standards. Across the entire classical world that bordered the Mediterranean Sea, honey remained the primary sweetener available, flavoring foods and wines and medicines in an age that knew nothing yet of refined sugar from distant lands. Medieval monasteries across Europe became renowned centers of beekeeping excellence during the long centuries of the Middle Ages, their dedicated monks carefully tending extensive hives to produce honey for brewing mead and precious beeswax for candles. Church candles were traditionally required by religious law to contain substantial amounts of beeswax, symbolizing the purity of the Virgin Mary through the bee's supposed virgin birth that fascinated medieval theologians. This steady religious demand created reliable markets for quality wax throughout Europe, and monastery apiaries expanded continuously to meet the growing need from cathedrals and parish churches alike. The quiet, meditative work of beekeeping suited perfectly the contemplative rhythm of monastic life behind stone walls and within peaceful gardens. European settlers brought honeybees across the Atlantic to North America in the early 17th century, forever changing the continent's ecological and agricultural landscape in ways both intended and unforeseen. Native Americans, observing with interest the spread of these unfamiliar insects ahead of European settlements pushing westward, reportedly came to call them the white man's fly, because their arrival often heralded the approach of settlers not far behind. Within a few short generations, honeybees had established wild feral populations across vast stretches of the continent, pollinating the orchards and gardens that fed the growing young nation. This transplanted European species became woven into American agriculture as thoroughly and essentially as wheat or cattle or any other import from the Old World. The modern movable frame hive, invented in the mid-19th century by Lorenzo Langstroth and others, revolutionized the practice of beekeeping by allowing inspection and management of colonies without destroying the intricate comb structures the bees had worked so hard to build. This elegant innovation, developed independently by several inventors in different countries, made large-scale commercial beekeeping practical for the first time in history. Beekeepers could now remove individual frames at will, harvest honey far more efficiently than ever before, and monitor their colonies regularly for disease or other problems. The ancient art of beekeeping transformed gradually into a more precise science over the following decades, though the essential relationship between human and bee remained fundamentally unchanged by these technological advances. Today, the practice of migratory beekeeping moves millions of hives across the country each year to pollinate agricultural crops in different regions as they come sequentially into bloom throughout the growing season. The almond orchards of California's Central Valley require so many bees each spring that enormous trucks carry hives from across the entire nation to meet this intense seasonal demand for pollination services. This mobile pollination service has become absolutely essential to modern commercial agriculture, with professional beekeepers traveling thousands upon thousands of miles annually following the flowering seasons from crop to crop across the continent. The ancient partnership between bee and flower now operates on a truly industrial scale that our ancestors could never have imagined. Backyard beekeeping has experienced a quiet renaissance in recent years as urban and suburban gardeners across the country have discovered the deep joys and rewards of keeping their own small hives in gardens and on rooftops. These small-scale hobbyist beekeepers often prioritize the health and overall well-being of their beloved bees over maximum honey production, finding genuine meditation and peace in the regular inspection of their colonies as seasons turn. The rooftops of cities from coast to coast now host thriving hives tended by enthusiasts who have found in the ancient practice of beekeeping a meaningful connection to the natural world that is often painfully missing from our hurried modern lives. Honey remains one of the most widely consumed and universally beloved natural foods on Earth, treasured across every culture for its sweetness and remarkable variety of flavors. From the pale, delicate honey of acacia flowers to the dark intensity of buckwheat or the prized medicinal qualities of New Zealand manuka, each variety reflects the unique botanical origins of the flowers from which the nectar was gathered. Modern honey hunters in the remote regions of Nepal still climb sheer cliffs to harvest from wild nests hanging hundreds of feet above the ground, continuing dangerous traditions that are thousands of years old. In markets and kitchens worldwide, this golden substance connects us to bees in the same way it has connected humans since the very beginning of our species. As this reflection on our long shared history with bees comes to a gentle pause in the quieting evening, we can appreciate how thoroughly these small, remarkable creatures have woven themselves into every aspect of human experience across the ages. From prehistoric caves illuminated by flickering torches to modern glass-towered cities, from ancient temples filled with incense to ordinary backyard gardens blooming in the sun, the relationship endures unbroken. We have changed the bees somewhat over millennia of selective breeding, favoring gentleness and productivity in our managed hives. But they have changed us as well in ways we rarely consider, teaching patience and cooperation and community through their quiet daily example. This partnership, older than civilization itself by countless thousands of years, continues to sweeten our world in ways both literal and profound. While honeybees have accompanied us on this peaceful evening's journey through their world, they represent only one small branch of a much larger and more diverse family than most people realize. Over 20,000 distinct species of bees exist worldwide, each uniquely adapted to particular habitats and lifestyles through millions of years of evolution. Some live in vast organized colonies, like honeybees with their queens and workers, while countless others dwell alone, each solitary female building her own small nest and provisioning her offspring without help from any other bee. This remarkable diversity reflects the many creative solutions evolution has found to the universal challenge of gathering nectar and pollen across vastly different landscapes and climates around the globe. Bumblebees, Those rotund and wonderfully fuzzy visitors to our gardens throughout the growing season live in much smaller and more intimate colonies than honeybees, typically numbering only a few hundred individuals, at most even at their summer peak. Their remarkable ability to vibrate their powerful flight muscles while clinging tightly to flowers, a specialized technique called buzz pollination or sonication, allows them to release tightly held pollen that honeybees simply cannot access no matter how they try. Tomatoes, blueberries, cranberries, peppers, and many other economically important crops depend heavily on bumblebee pollination for their successful fruiting, making these gentle fuzzy giants absolutely essential partners in our food systems, despite their less celebrated status compared to the famous honeybee. Solitary bees, comprising the vast majority of all bee species on Earth, live independent, self-sufficient lives without colonies or queens or any of the elaborate social organization we associate with honeybees. Mason bees construct their modest nests in hollow stems or pre-existing cavities they discover in wood or stone, partitioning these tubes with carefully crafted mud walls to create individual cells for each of their offspring. Leafcutter bees snip neat circular sections from rose leaves and other foliage to line their nests with protective green wallpaper. Mining bees dig their own tunnels in patches of bare soil, each industrious female preparing provisions for her young entirely, without assistance from any others. These unassuming solitary bees often significantly outperform honeybees as pollinators of specific crops when measured flower by flower. Carpenter bees, often mistaken for bumblebees by casual observers due to their similar impressive size, excavate their nesting tunnels directly into wood using their remarkably strong mandibles as tiny chisels. The perfectly round holes they create in fence posts, deck boards, and weathered wooden structures sometimes alarm homeowners who fear structural damage. But these peaceful, industrious creatures rarely cause any significant harm to buildings when suitable natural wood remains available nearby. They visit many of the same flowers as other large bees throughout the garden, their substantial bodies quite capable of carrying impressive pollen loads from blossom to blossom. Their presence in a yard indicates a garden environment rich in both diverse flowers and adequate nesting opportunities for these gentle giants. Sweat bees, named somewhat unfortunately for their occasional attraction to human perspiration on hot summer days, include some of the very smallest bee species found anywhere on Earth. Many of these tiny creatures shimmer beautifully with metallic green or brilliant blue coloring that catches the light like precious gemstones, miniature jewels moving among flowers, often completely overlooked by casual observers who expect bees to be larger and more conspicuous. Despite their truly diminutive size, these small bees pollinate with remarkable efficiency, their compact bodies able to access narrow tubular flowers too small for larger bees to enter. A single square foot of wildflower meadow may host dozens or even hundreds of these miniature pollinators going about their work, entirely invisible unless you pause and look very closely at the blooms. Some bees have evolved remarkably specialized relationships with particular plants that border on the intimate, their lives completely intertwined with specific flower species. The squash bee awakens before dawn in the gray pre-light hours to visit squash flowers that will close by mid-morning as the day warms, timing its daily activity precisely to match the brief availability of its preferred blossoms. Longhorned bees possess extraordinary antennae, sometimes longer than their entire bodies. These remarkable appendages adapting them perfectly to their unique lifestyles and helping them navigate through the complex world of flowers and nests. These fascinating specialists remind us that the world of bees extends far beyond the familiar honeybee we know so well, encompassing countless intricate variations on the eternal theme of flower and pollinator dancing together through evolutionary time. Cuckoo bees have abandoned the considerable labor of nest building and pollen collection entirely over evolutionary time, instead taking a different path by laying their eggs secretly in the nests of other bee species. Their larvae hatch and consume the provisions so carefully intended for their hosts, emerging eventually as adults without having worked at all for their sustenance. This strategy, though seemingly harsh or parasitic by human standards, represents simply one of evolution's many successful experiments in survival and reproduction. The great majority of bees still build their own honest nests and provision their own offspring with dedication, but nature allows room for every strategy that succeeds in passing genes to the next generation, neither judging nor preferring one path over another in its vast, indifferent creativity. Stingless bees, found throughout tropical regions worldwide from the Americas to Asia to Australia, build elaborate and sometimes enormous nests from carefully crafted mixtures of beeswax and sticky plant resins they gather from tree buds and bark. Though they lack functional stingers and cannot deliver the defensive sting of honeybees, they defend their precious homes with determination by biting intruders or swarming them in overwhelming numbers until the threat retreats. Many tropical cultures have kept these stingless bees for honey production since ancient times, stretching back beyond memory, their milder, sweeter honey valued highly for its supposed medicinal properties and delicate flavor. These gentle tropical bees remind us that the wonderful diversity of bee life extends across all warm regions of the globe, each species adapting beautifully to local conditions and available flowers. The orchid bees of Central and South America present some of the most striking and beautiful examples of bee beauty anywhere in the natural world. Males of these extraordinary species collect fragrant aromatic compounds from orchids and other flower sources with great care, storing these perfumes in specialized pouches on their hind legs to create complex scent bouquets that attract females. Their bodies shimmer brilliantly with metallic greens, deep blues, and rich golds that change with the angle of light, rivaling any precious jewel in their brilliance and complexity of color. These remarkable creatures demonstrate eloquently that the vast bee family encompasses not only humble workers of agricultural importance, but also true artists emerging from natural selection's most creative and extravagant designs. As we appreciate this rich tapestry of bee diversity spreading across every continent except Antarctica, we come to realize that protecting bees means protecting thousands upon thousands of different species, each with unique needs and particular vulnerabilities that vary by habitat and lifestyle. Habitat loss, as wild areas are converted to human uses, pesticides applied without thought to their broader effects, and the steady march of climate change threatens solitary bees as much as the honeybees we know, and often far more severely, because these species have no beekeepers advocating for their welfare. Yet gardens planted thoughtfully with diverse native flowers can offer refuge to many species seeking food and shelter, and simply leaving some patches of bare ground and hollow stems or branches provides desperately needed nesting sites. In our own quiet ways wherever we live, we can support this vast family of pollinators who share our world and ask so little in return. As the night deepens gently around us and the world grows quieter still, we turn to consider the inner world of bees, those profound mysteries of mind and feeling that scientists are only now beginning to explore with proper seriousness and careful methodology. Do bees experience something like emotions, those internal states we know so well from our own lives? Recent research conducted in laboratories around the world suggests that they may indeed have inner experiences. Bees that receive unexpected rewards in experiments show behaviors remarkably similar to what we would call optimism in humans, while those encountering repeated disappointments and failures display patterns closely resembling pessimism or discouragement. The tiny brain of the bee, it seems, contains far more subtlety and nuance than earlier generations of scientists ever imagined possible. Play behavior, once thought to be unique to mammals and certain intelligent birds, has now been reliably observed in bumblebees under carefully controlled scientific conditions. Given access to small wooden balls in an experimental arena, bees will roll them repeatedly across the surface, apparently for no practical purpose beyond the activity itself and the satisfaction it seems to bring. They actively choose to engage in play even when abundant food is readily available nearby, strongly suggesting the behavior brings its own intrinsic satisfaction separate from any survival benefit. This remarkable discovery hints at something like joy in simple movement, genuine pleasure in interaction with novel objects, experiences we might recognize fondly from our own childhoods, now translated unexpectedly into bee form. Sleep in bees follows patterns that are strikingly similar to our own familiar cycles of rest and waking. After extended periods of foraging or other activity within the hive, bees find quiet, sheltered locations and enter states of markedly reduced responsiveness to their surroundings. Their antennae droop downward, their leg and flight muscles relax completely, and their reaction times slow dramatically compared to their alert waking state. Deprive a bee of her necessary sleep through experimental manipulation, and her cognitive performance suffers noticeably just as our own does after sleepless nights. She makes more errors in navigation and communication with her sisters, clearly demonstrating that rest serves absolutely essential functions for the bee mind every bit as much as it does for the human one. Dreaming may also visit the sleeping bee during her quiet hours of rest within the hive. Sophisticated studies measuring electrical activity in bee brains during their rest periods have detected characteristic patterns strongly suggesting the consolidation of memories from the day's experiences, a neural process closely associated with dreaming in mammals, including ourselves. Perhaps foragers replay their long flights through endless fields of flowers, reinforcing the complex routes they will need to follow again tomorrow when the sun rises. We cannot truly know what images or sensations pass through the bee's small mind during these quiet, unconscious moments, but the tantalizing possibility of bee dreams adds yet another layer of wonder to their already remarkable and mysterious lives. The ability to recognize individual human faces, demonstrated convincingly in carefully controlled laboratory experiments, reveals surprisingly sophisticated visual processing capabilities hidden within the bee's tiny brain. Bees trained to associate certain specific human faces with sweet sugar water rewards could reliably pick those same faces out of a lineup, successfully distinguishing them from similar alternative faces they had never seen before. This remarkable capacity, which likely evolved originally to help bees recognize individual flowers they had visited, or perhaps individual nestmates within the crowded hive, shows that the bee brain, though containing fewer than 1 million neurons compared to our billions, performs complex pattern recognition tasks that would challenge many sophisticated artificial intelligence systems designed by human engineers. Decision-making in bees shows surprising sophistication that continues to impress researchers who study their behavior in both laboratory and natural settings. When choosing between different flower patches of varying qualities scattered across the landscape, bees weigh multiple factors simultaneously, including the distance they must fly, the concentration and volume of nectar each source offers, and the level of competition from other foragers already exploiting that patch. They update their preferences continuously based on their most recent experiences, and can even compare options that are not immediately visible to them, holding one choice carefully in memory while flying off to sample another before making their final decision. This thoughtful, methodical evaluation of options strongly suggests genuine planning and comparison, cognitive abilities we rarely attribute to insects, but which bees clearly demonstrate. Stress responses in bees parallel those found in vertebrates far more closely than scientists once expected or would have predicted from evolutionary distance alone. When shaken physically or disturbed by predator cues or rough handling, bees show measurably elevated levels of stress hormones in their tiny bodies and display pessimistic behavioral biases in subsequent tests. Chronic ongoing stress impairs their immune systems and significantly reduces their lifespans compared to unstressed colony mates living in identical conditions. These important findings suggest that bees genuinely experience something like anxiety or fear, internal states we should carefully consider when managing hives for beekeeping or designing scientific experiments that involve these sensitive creatures. Their inner lives may certainly be simpler and different from our own, but they are most definitely not empty. Social connections within the crowded hive appear to matter deeply to individual bees, extending far beyond mere functional cooperation for survival and reproduction. Bees grooming one another with their legs and mandibles, sharing food mouth to mouth in tender exchanges, or simply resting quietly in physical contact seem to derive genuine benefit from these interactions that goes beyond the simple exchange of physical goods or hygiene maintenance. Isolation from the colony affects bee behavior negatively in measurable ways, strongly suggesting that the company of their sisters provides something emotionally necessary to their overall well-being. In the warm, crowded darkness of the hive, countless small moments of connection and caring weave individuals into a true community held together by something more than instinct and chemistry alone. Show consistent, distinct personalities across time, some demonstrably bolder and more exploratory in their behavior, others notably more cautious and reliable in their foraging patterns. These personality differences persist over each bee's lifetime and influence the specific roles each bee naturally gravitates toward playing within the larger colony organization. Yet the individual bee also merges seamlessly into the superorganism of the hive, her personal identities somehow both distinct and dissolved into something vastly larger than herself. Perhaps the bee experiences no uncomfortable tension between these seemingly contradictory states, finding completeness and satisfaction equally in both individual selfhood and communal belonging. As we ponder these brief glimpses into the depths of bee consciousness in the quieting evening, we find ourselves deeply humbled by how much still remains unknown about these familiar creatures who have shared our world for so long. The profound question of what it actually feels like to be a bee, to experience the world through compound eyes and sensitive antennae, may never receive a complete satisfying answer, yet the very asking of it enriches our appreciation and understanding immeasurably. These small, remarkable creatures, going about their ancient work as they have for millions of years, carry within their tiny bodies experiences we can only partially imagine and never truly share. In their quiet, unhurried way, they remind us that consciousness takes many forms beyond our own, and the world teems with perspectives and experiences forever beyond our full comprehension. And now, dear listener, our peaceful journey through the fascinating world of bees begins its gentle descent toward the welcoming shores of rest that await at the edge of sleep. The night has grown deep and beautifully still around us both, and the many facts we have shared together settle softly through your mind like pollen drifting slowly down upon waiting petals. Perhaps your eyelids have grown pleasantly heavy by now, your breathing slow and naturally even without any effort on your part. This is exactly as it should be at this late and quiet hour. Let the remembered hum of bees carry you further from wakefulness with each passing moment, further into the peaceful darkness where restful sleep awaits your arrival. Imagine yourself now resting in a peaceful meadow at dusk, the last golden light of day fading gently from the western sky as the sun slips below the distant horizon. The flowers have begun to close their colorful petals against the coming night, and the bees have all returned safely to their warm hive for the evening hours ahead. A profound, soothing quiet settles gradually over the entire landscape, broken only by the soft whisper of a gentle wind moving through the tall grass around you. You can rest here in complete safety, in this imagined place of peace, surrounded by the comforting certainty that the meadow will still be here tomorrow morning, that the bees will fly again with the rising sun. Within the sheltered hive, the bees are settling down for the night as well, their activities mirroring your own journey toward rest. The busy, frantic activity of the long, productive day has given way to slower, more deliberate movements to quieter, gentler purposes as darkness deepens outside. Nurse bees still tend the developing brood with patient care, and the queen continues her steady, important work. But the overall pace of the colony has gentled considerably as evening settles over the world. The temperature remains warm and comfortingly constant inside the hive, a reassuring comfort against the cooling night air outside their wax walls. In this protected sacred space, thousands of small lives rest peacefully together, their collective presence generating a warmth unto itself that needs no other source. The honey stored carefully in its perfect wax chambers holds within itself the memory of sunlight and flowers, sweetness distilled from countless warm summer afternoons when the world was bright and full of life. It waits now in perfect stillness within the darkened hive, golden and patient and asking nothing of anyone. Like you, the honey rests quietly. Like you, it holds within itself the concentrated essence of gentler, warmer days, now past but not forgotten. And like the bees who made it through their tireless labor, you too have earned this moment of peaceful rest at the end of a long journey through your own waking hours. Let your body grow heavier now, sinking comfortably into whatever surface supports you in this moment. Feel the pleasant weight of your relaxed limbs, the gentle pull of gravity inviting you ever deeper into complete and total relaxation. The bees have stopped their flying for the night outside, and so too can your thoughts cease their busy circling through the concerns of the day now ended. There is nothing you need to do right now, nowhere you need to be, nothing at all required of you, until the soft morning light eventually calls you gently back to wakefulness when the time is right. In the ancient language of flowers and bees, a language of scent and movement and subtle chemical signals, there exists a word for precisely this moment we are sharing together, though no human tongue can properly speak it, and no dictionary could ever contain its meaning. It is the scent of evening closing gently over the garden, the slowing of tiny wings as the lust forager returns safely home to her sisters, the softening of bright daylight into restful shadow as the world prepares for sleep. It is that exhale that comes naturally at the end of effort, the release of purpose into simply being present in this moment. Rest now in this beautiful, unnamable peace that the bees have known since the very first flowers bloomed in some ancient forgotten spring. The stars now shine in their countless thousands above the sleeping meadow, their ancient light traveling distances too vast and incomprehensible to contemplate without feeling dizzy. The bees do not look up at stars with their compound eyes, but we can imagine they sense somehow the immense vastness above them, the same way we feel the presence of mysteries forever beyond our understanding when we gaze upward on clear nights. Under these same eternal stars, bees have rested peacefully for millions upon millions of years through every season, and we join them now in this simple, timeless act of peaceful surrender to the welcoming night. Your breathing continues its slow, natural rhythm without any conscious effort, steady and reliable as the gentle heartbeat of the hive itself pulsing with collective life. Each breath carries you further from the concerns and worries of the day now past, further into the restful, welcoming darkness where dreams may come unbidden to visit your sleeping mind. Perhaps you will dream of colorful flowers swaying in a warm breeze, of bright sunlight on your face, of the gentle hum of wings nearby as bees go about their peaceful work. Or perhaps you will dream of nothing at all tonight, floating in the sweet, empty stillness that only the deepest, most restful sleep provides. The 100 gentle facts about bees we have shared together tonight will wait patiently for you, held safely in memory like golden honey, stored in its perfectly shaped cells until you need it again. You need not think of them now or try to remember anything specific. You need not think of anything at all. Simply let yourself drift on the quiet current of sleepiness that flows naturally through these final, peaceful moments of our time together. The bees are resting inside their warm hive. The flowers are closed against the night. The whole world is still and safe and waiting for morning. Yet our journey continues onward still, for there remain more gentle truths to share about these remarkable small creatures who have accompanied us through this evening. The night stretches long and peaceful before us, with plenty of time for rest, and the bees have so much more wisdom to teach us in the hours ahead. Let us drift onward together through further chambers of wonder and discovery, each one quieter and more deeply restful than the last. The deepest, most refreshing sleep awaits patiently at the end of our winding path through the darkness. But first, there are more soft discoveries to make together in the honeyed darkness. Now we turn our attention more fully to the queen herself, that singular, remarkable figure at the very heart of every honeybee colony's existence. Despite her royal title that suggests commanding authority, she issues no commands and makes no decisions for her many subjects who surround her constantly. Her power lies not in authority or rule, but in simple presence, in the pheromones that flow constantly from her elongated body like a calming perfume, signaling to every worker bee in the colony that all is well and the future is secure. She is less a ruler in any meaningful sense than a living symbol of continuity, the biological mother of nearly every bee in her colony of thousands, her very existence the invisible thread that weaves thousands of individual bees into one unified whole. A queen begins her life as a completely ordinary egg, indistinguishable in any way from those destined to become common workers in the colony. Only the specialized food she receives from her worker sisters determines her extraordinary fate and separates her from her siblings. Bathed continuously in rich, royal jelly, a creamy secretion abundantly rich in proteins and growth hormones, the developing larva grows differently than all her sisters receiving the standard diet. Her reproductive organs mature fully rather than remaining vestigial. Her body elongates significantly, and within just 16 days from egg to adult emergence, she emerges transformed as a queen. This remarkable transformation, triggered entirely by diet alone, reminds us how profoundly environment can shape destiny, even in creatures as small as bees. Shortly after emerging from her special cell as an adult, a virgin queen undertakes the only journey she will ever make beyond the protected walls of her hive. On warm, calm afternoons, when conditions favor flying, she launches herself into the air and flies to a drone congregation area where male bees from many different colonies in the region have gathered high above the ground. Here, suspended high in the air, far above the earth, She mates with multiple drones in rapid succession, storing their genetic contributions within her body for the rest of her long life. She will never mate again after these few brief flights, yet this single series of aerial encounters provides all the genetic material she will ever need to lay millions of eggs across all the years ahead. Once mated and her spermatheca filled with the stored contributions of her drone consorts, the queen returns to spend the entire remainder of her life within the warm darkness of the hive she will never leave again. She moves deliberately across the comb surfaces, attended always by a devoted retinue of workers who feed her the finest food, groom her body carefully, and carry her pheromones throughout every corner of the colony. Her days consist of one primary activity repeated endlessly: laying eggs. In peak season, when the colony needs maximum growth, she may deposit 2,000 or more eggs daily, her abdomen dipping precisely into cell after cell, each egg placed exactly in the center with perfect accuracy. This quiet, unceasing industry continues year after year, building the population that sustains the colony's collective life. The queen possesses the remarkable biological ability to consciously choose the sex of each individual egg she lays as she moves methodically across the comb. Fertilized eggs become female workers or potential queens depending on how they are subsequently fed, while unfertilized eggs develop into male drones who carry only the queen's genetic material. She makes this crucial choice by releasing or withholding stored sperm as each egg passes through her reproductive system, guided instinctively by the physical size of the cell she encounters. Larger drone cells built by workers receive unfertilized eggs destined to become males, while standard smaller worker cells receive fertilized ones that will develop into females. This remarkable control allows the colony to precisely adjust its population composition according to seasonal needs and currently available resources. Queen substance, the primary pheromone produced by a healthy queen and spread throughout the colony by workers who touch her body, performs many vital functions within the social organization of the hive. It powerfully suppresses the development of ovaries in worker bees, preventing them from ever laying eggs themselves and ensuring that only the queen reproduces. It attracts workers to attend the queen constantly and motivates them to feed and care for her with devoted attention. It signals to every bee in the colony that all is queen-right and stable, that the colony has a future. When this essential pheromone weakens due to age or illness, workers sense the change almost immediately and begin preparations for succession, building new queen cells to ensure the colony's continuity. A queen may live for 3 to 5 years under favorable conditions, far longer than the workers she produces, who typically live only weeks during the active season. As she ages through the seasons and years, her egg-laying capacity gradually declines from its youthful peak, and her pheromone production weakens measurably as well. The workers throughout the colony, sensing this diminishment through the fading strength of her chemical signals, may collectively decide to supersede her, raising a new daughter queen while the old mother still lives and lays. This transition often occurs peacefully and without conflict, with mother and daughter coexisting briefly on the same combs before the elder passes naturally from old age. The colony thus ensures its survival through gentle succession rather than crisis or violence. When a colony prepares to reproduce through swarming in the spring, the workers reduce the queen's food intake considerably over several days, slimming her heavy egg-laden body so she can fly again after perhaps years of sedentary life spent entirely within the hive laying eggs. This careful preparation takes several days to complete, during which time the queen becomes noticeably lighter and more agile as her abdomen shrinks. When the swarm finally departs on a warm, calm day, she joins thousands of her workers in flight out of the hive entrance and into the unknown, leaving behind a still functioning colony with a new virgin queen emerging to take her place. Both groups carry forward the colony's precious genetic legacy, splitting one life into two to multiply its chances of survival. The sound a queen makes, a distinctive piping note that rises and falls in the darkness of the hive, carries important meaning to all who hear it within the colony. Virgin queens pipe loudly to announce their presence and locate any rival queens who might also have emerged from their cells, sometimes engaging in acoustic duels through the comb walls. Established mated queens may also pipe to communicate with their workers during swarming preparations, coordinating the complex social event through sound. This acoustic signaling adds yet another layer to the already complex communication system of the colony, demonstrating that bees use not only dance and pheromones, but also sound waves transmitted through the comb itself to coordinate their intricate collective life. In queenless colonies that have lost their queen without opportunity to raise a replacement, workers sometimes attempt to lay eggs themselves in a last desperate effort to continue. Without the suppressing chemical influence of queen pheromones circulating through the hive, some workers' vestigial ovaries develop to functionality, and they begin depositing unfertilized eggs in cells that should contain worker brood. These eggs can only ever produce drones, since workers cannot mate, leading the colony slowly but inevitably toward decline and eventual death if no new queen is introduced from outside. This desperate biological measure reveals how essential the queen's presence truly is, not for any authority she wields, but for the delicate biological balance she maintains through her chemical influence alone. Emergency queens arise when a colony unexpectedly loses its queen through accident or predation, but still possesses young larvae that can be redirected toward a royal fate. Workers select several of the youngest larvae that would otherwise have been destined to become ordinary workers and begin feeding them exclusively rich, royal jelly in massive quantities. These emergency queen cells are built hurriedly around existing larvae in standard cells rather than being constructed specially from the very start, as swarm cells would be. While emergency queens may be slightly smaller than those raised intentionally with more time and preparation, they can still mate successfully and lead the colony forward into the future. This adaptive emergency response demonstrates the remarkable flexibility that evolution has built into the bee's social system over millions of years. As we let these gentle thoughts about the queen settle softly into the quiet night that surrounds us both, we can appreciate her remarkable role not as sovereign or commander, but simply as center, as the living heart around which the colony organizes itself. Around her steady presence, The entire colony arranges its activities and purposes. From her fertile body, new generations flow endlessly forward into the future. Her presence provides stability and continuity. Her absence triggers profound transformation and emergency measures. In the fundamentally democratic hive, where no commands are ever issued and no bee takes orders from another, the queen remains nonetheless absolutely essential. Her quiet chemical influence, the invisible foundation upon which the entire colony builds its complex collective life. Gently now, as the night deepens toward its quietest hours, we attune our ears to the sounds that fill the hive, a symphony of vibrations and frequencies that bees create and perceive in ways invisible and inaudible to most human visitors. The collective hum of a healthy, contented colony creates a baseline tone that experienced beekeepers learn to recognize instantly, a reassuring sound of contentment and steady, productive work continuing undisturbed. Subtle changes in this familiar hum can signal disturbance, the presence of disease, or the absence of a queen. The attentive listener finds in these sounds a window into the colony's overall well-being, an acoustic portrait of collective mood painted in frequencies and harmonics. Worker bees produce their various sounds primarily through the powerful muscles in their thorax that normally drive their wings. By contracting these remarkably strong muscles while keeping their delicate wings folded at rest, they generate vibrations that travel efficiently through both the comb structure and the air of the hive. These sounds serve many different purposes within colony life. The rhythmic fanning to control temperature creates one distinctive noise familiar to all beekeepers, while the excited buzzing of disturbed or alarmed bees sounds quite noticeably different in pitch and intensity. Each activity within the hive carries its own unique acoustic signature, contributing to the overall rich soundscape of the living, breathing hive. The waggle dance we explored earlier in our journey contains an important acoustic component often overlooked by casual observers, focusing only on the visual movements. As a successful forager performs her figure-8 pattern on the vertical comb surface, she simultaneously vibrates her abdomen rapidly against the wax, producing a buzzing sound that other bees can both hear and feel through their feet. This sound reinforces and amplifies the visual information contained in the dance, helping nearby bees locate and follow the dancer, even in the crowded, pitch-dark interior of the hive, where vision is limited. The message thus travels through multiple sensory channels simultaneously, ensuring important information reaches its intended audience through redundancy. Fanning bees stationed in orderly rows at the hive entrance create a distinctive soft roar as hundreds of wings beat together in coordinated rhythm to circulate fresh air through the colony. This coordinated ventilation controls both temperature and humidity within the hive interior, conditions that are essential for proper brood development and the curing of nectar into stable honey. The sound of fanning rises and falls throughout the day with changing external conditions, increasing during hot summer afternoons and subsiding naturally as evening brings cooler air that requires less active management. Standing near a hive on a quiet summer day, one can clearly hear this respiratory rhythm of the colony itself, the hive breathing in and out. Bees perceive sound not primarily through ears, as we know them with our human anatomy, but through remarkably sensitive specialized organs located in their legs and antennae. The subgenual organ, found in each of their 6 legs, detects vibrations traveling through solid surfaces, like the honeycomb they stand upon, while Johnston's organ, located in the base of each antenna, senses airborne vibrations passing through the dark air of the hive. This distributed hearing system, spread throughout their bodies, allows bees to feel the soundscape of the hive through their entire physical form, immersed constantly in a tactile symphony of vibrations and frequencies that accompanies every waking moment of their lives. The stop signal, a specific vibrational message used by workers to interrupt dancers whose information has become outdated, consists of brief buzzes delivered through direct head-to-head contact on the crowded dance floor. When a forager receives this distinctive signal from another worker, she often pauses her dance immediately, responding to the updated information that the food source she has been advertising may no longer be worthwhile or may have become dangerous. This acoustic feedback system allows the colony to update its collective knowledge in real time as conditions change, filtering out obsolete information through gentle vibrating corrections passed from informed bee to uninformed bee across the busy comb surface. Young bees make noticeably different sounds than their older, more experienced sisters who have progressed to foraging duties. Newly emerged adults, still soft and pale from their cells, produce high-pitched begging sounds when soliciting food from nurse bees who have already digested and processed food for sharing. As these young bees mature and gradually take on new roles within the colony, their vocal repertoire changes along with their behaviors and responsibilities. This developmental shift in sound production mirrors the broader pattern of temporal polyethism, where each successive life stage brings different duties and different distinctive ways of communicating with the rest of the colony. The whir of worker wings in flight carries for surprising distances across quiet gardens and meadows. This sound, the archetypal bee buzz that humans have recognized and noted for thousands of years, results from wings beating roughly 200 times per second in a blur of motion. The exact frequency varies significantly with the bee's overall size, the weight of the load she carries in her pollen baskets and honey stomach, and the temperature of the surrounding air. Heavily loaded foragers, returning from productive flowers, with bulging pollen baskets and nectar-filled stomachs, produce a deeper, more labored buzz than empty bees departing on new foraging trips. Each flight thus carries its own unique acoustic signature through the garden air. Researchers have begun recording hive sounds continuously to monitor colony health remotely without ever opening the hive or disturbing its inhabitants. Subtle changes in the acoustic profile can indicate swarming preparations, the early stages of disease outbreaks, or the unexpected loss of a queen, sometimes detecting these conditions before other symptoms become apparent to even experienced beekeepers. This acoustic monitoring offers a completely non-invasive way to check on bees without disturbing them, listening attentively from outside while they continue their important work undisturbed within. Technology thus joins ancient beekeeping wisdom and observation skills in caring for these remarkable creatures we have tended for so many generations. The defensive buzz of an agitated hive sounds unmistakably different from the contented hum of a peaceful colony going about its daily business. This warning tone rises noticeably in pitch and volume, alerting potential intruders that they have approached too closely for comfort and should reconsider their proximity. Experienced beekeepers learn over years to read these acoustic signals accurately, knowing instinctively when to approach slowly and when to step back and return another time when the colony is calmer. The bees communicate their boundaries clearly through sound, preferring warning over confrontation, preferring sound over action whenever possible. At night, when foraging has ceased and the world outside the hive has grown dark and cool, the hive grows quieter but never truly silent. Reduced activity produces a softer, steadier hum as bees rest together in clusters on the comb, their wing muscles still generating gentle heat through occasional vibrations that keep the interior warm throughout the night. This nighttime soundscape carries a different quality than the busy daytime chorus, deeper and more meditative in its character, like the slow breathing of a sleeping creature, too large to see, but easy to imagine in the surrounding darkness. As we let these sounds fade gently into the quiet of our own evening and prepare to move onward in our journey, consider how much vital information flows constantly through the vibrating wax of the honeycomb. The hive speaks in frequencies we barely perceive with our limited human hearing, carrying conversations that have continued uninterrupted since bees first built their cities of wax countless millions of years ago in a world we can barely imagine. This acoustic world, layered beneath the visual world we more easily perceive, reminds us that every living community generates its own music, its own language of vibration that connects individuals into something larger and more enduring than themselves. Let us wander now through the gardens and meadows where bees find their daily sustenance, those colorful landscapes that have evolved alongside them across countless generations stretching back through time. A garden filled with blooming flowers is far more than merely beautiful scenery to a bee's compound eyes. It is a marketplace of essential resources, a varied landscape of opportunity where each individual blossom offers a small but vital transaction of nectar and protein-rich pollen. The relationship between garden and bee benefits both participants in this ancient partnership, creating abundance through cooperation that neither could possibly achieve alone in isolation. Native plants often provide the richest and most nutritious rewards for local bee populations, having co-evolved over thousands upon thousands of years with the specific pollinators in their geographic region. These indigenous flowers bloom at precisely appropriate times when their pollinator partners need them most, offer nectar of suitable concentration perfectly matched to local bee preferences, and present their rewards at accessible heights and angles that make foraging efficient. When we choose to plant native species in our gardens, we participate in relationships that predate human cultivation by millions of years, offering bees the very foods their ancestors have sought since long before our gardens existed. Succession planting, the thoughtful practice of arranging a garden so that something blooms continuously from early spring through late autumn, provides bees with reliable food sources across the entire foraging season without gaps. Early crocuses and flowering willows feed emerging bees desperate for any resources after the long deprivation of winter. Summer brings the great abundance of midsummer flowers in overwhelming profusion. Late-blooming asters and goldenrod offer critical nutrition as bees prepare for the cold months ahead and build up their winter stores. A thoughtfully planted garden becomes a calendar of sustenance, marking the seasons in blossoms. Single-flowered varieties generally offer more accessible rewards than heavily doubled cultivars bred primarily for ornamental petals to please human eyes. In many doubled flowers, created through selective breeding for showiness, the extra decorative petals actually replace the reproductive structures that produce nectar and pollen, leaving bees with beautiful but nutritionally empty blossoms that waste their precious foraging time. Traditional cottage garden flowers, herbs allowed to bloom fully, and old-fashioned heirloom varieties often prove far more valuable to pollinators than their modern showy descendants developed without consideration for the bees that once depended on them. Culinary herbs offer exceptional value to both gardeners and bees alike, serving dual purposes in the garden. Lavender, thyme, oregano, sages, and mint produce abundant flowers, richly laden with nectar when allowed to bloom rather than being constantly trimmed. These Mediterranean herbs thrive in sunny, well-drained conditions and ask little in return for their generous offerings to both human cooks and hungry pollinators. A small herb spiral or border can sustain numerous grateful bee visitors throughout the entire growing season while simultaneously providing culinary treasures for the kitchen as well, a partnership of mutual benefit. Water sources matter as much as flowers to foraging bees, though gardeners often overlook this essential need. Bees need water to dilute thick-stored honey for consumption, to regulate hive temperature through evaporative cooling, and to maintain their own bodily hydration during hot summer weather when they work hardest. A shallow dish with pebbles or floating corks provides safe landing spots where bees can drink without risk of drowning in deep water. Even a damp patch of soil or a dripping faucet can serve this vital purpose for thirsty visitors. The thoughtful garden includes water as thoughtfully and deliberately as it includes blossoms. Leaving some areas of the garden unmown and deliberately wild provides crucial nesting habitat for ground nesting bees who need bare or sparsely vegetated soil to excavate their individual burrows. Patches of undisturbed earth, south-facing sunny banks, and areas with sparse vegetation offer these numerous solitary species the protected nesting sites they require to complete their life cycles. A perfectly manicured lawn offers little to most bees beyond perhaps some occasional clover blossoms, while a garden with diverse physical structure and varied microclimates supports both cavity nesting and ground nesting species throughout all stages of their life cycles. Bee hotels, simple structures made of bundled hollow stems and blocks of wood drilled with various sized holes, provide nesting sites for cavity nesting solitary bees who would otherwise seek hollow plant stems or beetle holes in dead wood. Mason bees, leafcutter bees, and various other solitary species readily adopt these artificial homes, raising their young in the provided tubes and returning year after year. Placement matters considerably. A bee hotel should face south or southeast to catch morning warmth, protected from rain and wind, mounted firmly at 3 to 6 feet above the ground. These simple structures bring the quiet wonder of solitary bee life into accessible everyday view. Chemical pesticides pose significant risks to bees both individually and at the colony level, affecting their navigation abilities, memory formation, immune systems, and reproductive success, even at doses too low to cause immediate visible death. A truly bee-friendly garden minimizes or eliminates chemical interventions entirely, relying instead on diverse plantings that attract beneficial predatory insects, companion planting strategies, and manual management to address pest concerns naturally. The conscious choice to garden organically extends protection to all the small lives that share our outdoor spaces and depend on them for survival. Meadow restoration transforms ordinary manicured lawns into diverse living habitats, supporting hundreds of plant and animal species in a rich web of life. Native wildflower meadows require far less maintenance than traditional turf once properly established, needing only annual mowing in late winter, rather than energy-intensive weekly cutting throughout the growing season. These living carpets change continuously through the seasons, offering different blooms and different beauties from the first spring flowers through the final frost of autumn. A meadow is never static or finished, always in process, a partnership between gardener and nature, unfolding slowly across years. Urban gardens, however small they may be, contribute significantly to bee populations in cities where green space remains limited and fragmented across the landscape. Even a modest window box or balcony container planted with bee-friendly flowers provides resources that might otherwise be completely absent from entire city blocks. These scattered patches of habitat create stepping stones through urban landscapes of concrete and glass, allowing bees to move between larger green spaces like parks and community gardens and find sustenance in unexpected places along the way. Every single flower matters in the concrete wilderness of our modern cities. As we rest amid these peaceful thoughts of gardens and their buzzing visitors, we can take comfort in knowing that simple, thoughtful actions create meaningful change in the world around us. A few flowering plants on a patio, a shallow water source with landing stones, an undisturbed patch of earth left wild. These small gestures ripple outward through the intricate web of life in ways we may never fully see. The gardener who plants with bees consciously in mind participates in a relationship older than agriculture itself, continuing a partnership that has shaped both human and bee civilization across countless millennia of shared history. Now we drift backward through time itself into the deep past to consider the immense antiquity of bees upon this ancient planet we share. The oldest known bee fossil dates back approximately 100 million years, preserved in amber that once flowed as sticky resin from ancient trees in prehistoric forests. This small creature, trapped forever in golden transparency, tells us that bees have witnessed the rise and fall of the dinosaurs, the slow drift of continents across the face of the earth, and countless ice ages, adapting and persisting through changes we can barely imagine from our brief human perspective. bees evolved from wasp-like ancestors who shifted their diet from hunting other insects to gathering protein-rich pollen and energy-giving nectar from the newly diversifying flowering plants. This dietary transition, occurring roughly during the time when dinosaurs still walked the earth, represents one of the great partnerships in all of evolutionary history. As flowers evolved more attractive displays and richer rewards to attract pollinators, bees developed better tools and behaviors for harvesting them efficiently. Each shaped the other across millions of years of mutual influence and gradual refinement. The remarkable explosion of flowering plant diversity that occurred roughly 80 to 100 million years ago coincided with the radiation of bee species across the entire planet. This mutual flourishing suggests that neither flowers nor bees would exist in their present magnificent abundance without the other. The colorful world of blossoms we take for granted today, the petals and scents that brighten our gardens and meadows, emerged through this ancient partnership, painted into existence by the selective pressure of tiny pollinators seeking food and inadvertently carrying genetic material from flower to flower. Social behavior in bees has evolved multiple times independently in different lineages, suggesting that the benefits of colony living are significant enough to arise repeatedly under similar ecological conditions. Honeybees, stingless bees, and some sweat bees all developed complex societies through completely separate evolutionary pathways, converging on similar solutions to similar challenges. This convergence tells us something profound about the advantages of cooperation and division of labor, a lesson written in the genes of creatures who discovered collectively what no individual could ever achieve alone. The honeybee genus, Apis, appears in the fossil record approximately 23 million years ago, relatively recent by bee standards, though almost inconceivably ancient from our human perspective. From origins likely in the tropical forests of Asia, honeybees spread gradually across the Old World, adapting to diverse climates and conditions as they expanded their range. They reached Europe, Africa, and the Middle East long before humans began keeping them, wild colonies nesting in tree hollows and cliff crevices across continents that had no fences or borders to contain their gradual expansion into every suitable habitat. Ice ages shaped bee distributions repeatedly across geological time, pushing populations southward during glacial advances when ice sheets covered vast territories and allowing northern expansion during warmer intervals when the ice retreated. These dramatic climatic fluctuations created isolated populations that evolved separately in their refugia, eventually producing the diversity of honeybee subspecies we recognize today across different continents. European bees, African bees, and Asian bees all descend from common ancestors, but adapted to their local conditions over hundreds of thousands of years of geographic separation and distinct selective pressures. The waggle dance, that remarkable communication system we explored earlier in our journey, may have evolved from simpler foraging behaviors over many millions of years of gradual refinement. Early bees perhaps simply became visibly excited when returning from rich food sources, their agitated movements gradually becoming standardized across generations into the precise symbolic language we observe today. The dance represents an accumulation of tiny improvements across countless generations, natural selection, slowly crafting meaning from movement, transforming excitement into information through the patient work of evolutionary time. Recent genetic studies suggest that honeybees nearly went extinct during the last ice age approximately 20,000 years ago, their populations dropping to dangerously low numbers in isolated refuges before recovering as climates gradually warmed and flowers returned to the thawing landscape. This genetic bottleneck explains why honeybees show relatively little genetic diversity compared to many other species that did not face such extreme population crashes. The bees we see today are the descendants of survivors who weathered near extinction, their persistence a testament to the resilience hidden within their tiny forms and their ability to adapt to changing conditions. Human-bee relationships also have deep roots, stretching far back into prehistory. Early humans discovered honey as a prized food source tens of thousands of years ago, as evidenced by remarkable cave paintings showing honey collection from wild nests using smoke and climbing ropes, in scenes that feel strangely familiar to modern eyes. This knowledge likely spread through countless generations of learning, each teaching the next where to find these sweet treasures and how to harvest them safely without being stung too badly. Our craving for honey connects us to ancestors who lived in worlds unimaginably different from our own, yet shared this same appreciation for the golden sweetness bees create. The domestication of honeybees represents one of humanity's oldest ongoing relationships with another species, stretching back at least several thousand years to ancient Egypt and the Middle East. Unlike most domesticated animals who have been bred to be dependent on human care, bees retain their wild instincts fully intact, entirely capable of surviving without human intervention if they choose to swarm and establish new homes in hollow trees. We have not so much tamed them as learned to work alongside them, providing convenient shelter in exchange for sharing their abundance. This partnership persists across millennia because it benefits both parties, a cooperation spanning thousands of years of mutual respect. Looking forward through evolutionary time rather than back, bees continue to adapt to changing conditions in the world around them with the same flexibility that has served them so well for so long. Urban-dwelling bees navigate by artificial landmarks like buildings and street signs and forage on ornamental plantings their wild ancestors never encountered in their natural habitats. Climate shifts push flowering times earlier, and bees adjust their emergence accordingly, matching their life cycles to the new rhythms. The story of bee evolution has not ended. It continues in every garden and meadow where flowers and pollinators meet, writing new chapters in a narrative already 100 million years old. As we let this deep history settle around us, like amber encasing the present moment in golden preservation, we find perspective in the long view that geology and evolution provide. The challenges bees face today, though serious and worthy of our concern, occur against a backdrop of remarkable persistence through far worse conditions. Creatures who survived the extinction of the dinosaurs and the ice ages carry within them resources for adaptation we may not fully appreciate or understand. In the ongoing dance between flower and pollinator, time moves slowly, and change comes gradually, measured not in human years, but in epochs and eras. And now, dear listener, we have come at last to the final passage of our long journey together through the world of bees. The night has grown very deep and very still around you, and you have traveled far through meadows and hives and ancient histories tonight. Let these last moments carry you gently toward the sleep that awaits, like a bee drifting homeward on the last warm light of evening. There is nothing more you need to learn tonight, nothing more you need to remember or hold on to. Only rest remains now, soft and welcoming as honeycomb. Imagine now the hive at midnight, wrapped in complete darkness and perfect silence under a sky filled with stars. The bees have ceased their labors for the day, their work complete until morning comes again. They cluster together in the warm center of their home, their bodies touching gently, their breathing synchronized into a single, slow, collective rhythm. No foragers fly in the darkness outside. No dancers perform their waggle runs on the quiet comb. Even the queen rests peacefully, her endless work of egg-laying paused until morning light returns. The hive breathes as one organism, dreaming whatever peaceful dreams bees dream. Your body grows heavier now, sinking deeper into the surface beneath you as gravity gently pulls you toward rest. Each breath comes slower and deeper than the last, requiring no conscious effort to maintain its rhythm. The facts about bees we have shared tonight begin to blur at the edges, merging into a warm golden impression rather than distinct separate thoughts. This is as it should be for the sleeping mind. Let the details dissolve into warmth. Let only the feeling remain, sweetness, warmth, the soft hum of life continuing in darkness. Outside your window, the world continues its quiet turning through the night, just as it has done for billions of years. Somewhere, in gardens you will never see, flowers have closed their petals against the darkness of night. Somewhere, hives stand silent beneath the stars, their inhabitants resting just as you are resting now. The same darkness that covers you covers them as well. The same peace that settles into your limbs settles into their clustered bodies. In this moment, you share something profound with the sleeping bees, the surrender to night. The stars shine down upon meadows where no human walks at this late hour, their ancient light traveling across vast distances to reach the sleeping earth. The flowers wait in patient darkness for dawn that will come whether we wake to see it or not. Time moves forward at its own unhurried pace, carrying us all toward morning without effort or intention on our part. You need do nothing now. You need think nothing now. Only breathe, slow and steady, like the pulse of life that beats through every hive, every garden, every corner of this sleeping world. Let your thoughts drift now like bees on a warm summer breeze, moving without direction, following no particular flower home. If a thought arises unbidden, let it pass like a cloud across the moon. If a worry surfaces, let it dissolve like morning mist that burns away in sunlight. There is nothing to solve tonight, nothing to plan, nothing to remember. The bees have stopped their work for the night. The flowers have closed their petals, and you too can release all the efforts of the day into the gentle custody of night. Honey holds within it the essence of 1,000 flowers, distilled into golden stillness that lasts for ages. Your rest tonight holds within it 1,000 moments of the day, transformed now into the deep quiet of sleep. Just as honey needs no explanation to be sweet, sleep needs no permission to arrive. It comes when the body is ready, when the mind releases its grip on wakefulness. You are ready now. Your mind is releasing its hold. The sweetness of rest awaits you. In the language of bees, there is no word for hurry. Their dances communicate distance and direction, abundance and quality, but never urgency. They move at the pace that nature requires, neither faster nor slower than necessary for their work. Let their ancient wisdom settle into your breathing now. There is no hurry. There is no deadline. There is only this breath and then the next, carrying you steadily toward the deep rest that your body knows how to find. The 100 facts about bees will wait for you, stored safely in memory like honey in its wax cells, preserved and ready whenever you wish to return. You can return to them whenever you wish, but tonight they need not occupy your thoughts. Let them fade into golden impressions, warm feelings without sharp edges. The bees are sleeping peacefully in their hive. The flowers are sleeping in the garden. The meadows dream beneath the stars. And you are drifting, carried by the gentle current of night toward dreams of your own. Your eyelids grow heavy as the evening flowers closing their petals against the night. Your limbs settle deeper into stillness, releasing the last tensions of the day. Each exhale carries something away, a thought, a concern, a remnant of wakefulness. Each inhale draws in calm, quiet peace. The rhythm continues without effort, automatic as the pulse of the hive, steady as the rotation of the earth through night and day and night again, endlessly. Somewhere between wakefulness and sleep, a threshold waits that requires no effort to cross. You need not push through it, or even notice when it passes. One moment you are listening, and the next you are dreaming. The transition happens as naturally as a bee settling onto a flower, as inevitably as honey flowing slowly downward. Trust in this natural process. It has carried you into sleep every night of your life, and it will carry you there now. And so we arrive at journey's end, though the bees will continue their ancient work long after these words have faded into sleep. Sleep now, gentle listener, wrapped in the knowledge of small wings and golden sweetness and the patient turning of seasons. Let the distant memory of soft humming carry you into the deepest rest. The meadow will be here when you wake, bathed in new light, humming with life, waiting to share its quiet wonders once more. Rest well, sleep deeply, dream of honey and flowers and peace.